with the Department of Education for New York Public City Schools. So I don't want to put her on the spot by asking something that's not cleared. And Liz, I don't know if if you want to give us some direction about how to manage a fluid conversation, or if there are any no-nos or things we need to just avoid altogether.
I mean, I think as long as we, and I want to thank you too for being sensitive to that, because it's a process. Let me just say, getting approval from DOE communications. But I think if we kind of stay around the topics that are in the questions about, partnerships with schools, like where we see audio education going in schools, challenges, difficulties, those kinds of things. Like I think it's safe to say, like, I know I have the answers cleared for those particular questions from communications, but if we kind of stay in that ballpark approximately, I think that's the safest thing.
Okay, great. I just saw a note from James that we're live and the links are coming shortly. So it's just so great to see so many beaming faces. And I'm sorry we lost Ty. I hope he's able to come back on, and I'm sure he's feverishly trying to reconnect. But yeah, so we've got California. You're in the Bay Area, is that right, Elena?
Yeah, over here in the Bay. It's
right.
beautiful and sunny, but I have no pool, so can't compare.
Cool. And Jillian, you're in Everett, Mass?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome.
Right north of Boston. Yep.
Excellent. And Dan's in Lynn, Massachusetts, I believe.
That's right. Beautiful Lynn, Massachusetts.
And holding down the connectorate is New Jersey folks, right? So Tony, you're in Jersey. Where in Jersey are you exactly?
I'm in Princeton.
Oh, right. So Middle Jersey.
And it's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
But I don't have a pool either.
Yeah, not enough of us have pools. Liz, you're in northern Jersey, right? Or are you in New York?
I'm actually on Long Island.
Island, excellent. Yeah, we're globetrotting here a little bit. When Ty joins us, we'll have Memphis represented too, which will be a good rep of the country. Go ahead.
No, I was wondering where on Long Island. It's a pretty long island.
Glen Cove.
Glen Cove.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't have a pool either, but I do have a robin's nest outside my window, so that's kind of unique.
Oh, are there any babies?
Yeah, they had on Mother's Day, they had 3 babies. So it's kind of looking out that when things get a little crazy, I like to just kind of peek out the window and see how the babies are doing.
I love it.
We had the same thing happen at my house as well. We had a robin and it actually had babies. Mother's Day was actually my birthday. So it was really exciting. And they're still out there. I don't know if they've hatched yet, but
it's exciting to watch them. They're so cute and they grow so fast.
They do.
Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. It was not as exciting as I'd hoped because of quarantine, but we made the best of it.
Did you Zoom?
I did Zoom. Yes, my whole family got on Zoom, even my grandparents, which God bless them. I don't know how they managed that, but they did.
They care.
I did a family Zoom gathering, and it's funny how all of the same things that annoy you about your family members when you're in person happen in Zoom also.
Oh, yes.
And the things you love about them too.
It's the full package. It's just digital package, right? It's like virtual reality. So we're going to talk about a lot of the same issue from a national perspective, which is pretty remarkable. And I think one of the coolest things about this conversation we're going to have, I'm really looking forward to finding out like how we're all connected in ways we're suffering, but also in the ways we're thriving. And also, having a chance to learn more about each other and your teaching processes. I mean, I think it's so interesting talking to different teachers about how they're managing this. And we've got Ty back.
I'm alive.
You did it.
Live. I heard a loud boom, and then all of a sudden I was gone, but I'm back.
Oh, we're glad you're back.
Awesome.
So it's 4:00 by my my clock. Let's fire this conversation up if it's okay, Tony. Um, I am just so deeply grateful for Eventide for giving us the space to have conversation about something that I don't think gets talked about in enough of a safe place. I think it happens on the fringes of music education. But audio education is something that everybody in this virtual room, and I think by extension, everyone tuning in is just deeply passionate about and is excited to find and connect with others who share that passion for connecting with people who are passionate about audio. And the Audio Engineering Society is really an incredible conduit for connecting people of all types and all backgrounds. Um, and this is sort of an outcropping of a movement where we've started within the Audio Engineering Society to reach out to more high school and teen audio educators across the country and find out what is that connective tissue that we all have through all the different versions of audio, whether it's radio, podcasting, sound for film, music production. It's all pretty much the same in schools. It's considered an interesting career path or hobby, maybe for a few. But we're finding that more and more there are programs that are building curriculum around it and building safe spaces for teens to experiment and get involved with audio and really connect with each other. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation with incredible
Well,
folks.
don't mean to interrupt, but you've said the word gratitude twice, and gratitude is very much a two-way street. Eventide would not have survived this long if it wasn't for educators and for the AES. I'm still at the company, but most of the great stuff that we're still accomplishing comes from people who went to schools, studied signal processing or audio techniques, and quite a few of them started out as interns. And some of the key ones we actually met at AES conventions. So it really is two-way street. Literally wouldn't be here without that.
That's great. And everybody in this room is got a major stakeholdership in that next crop of folks that show up at that AES convention and ask questions and get involved. And I'd like to just go around briefly and have everyone introduce themselves and talk about maybe in just a few sentences what area of audio you represent or how you're connected to the Audio Engineering Society. And we can start to get to know each other a little bit better, and for our listeners to know us and our backgrounds. And I'd like to start with Liz, if it's okay. I'm just going to give titles, and then we can sort of extrapolate from that. So Elizabeth Guglielmo is the Director of Music for New York City's Department of Education. I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. So basically, in terms of being the director of music for New York City Public Schools, we're very invested in making sure that music education and audio education are really accessible to students. And I see the two as, very much interconnected. And in my role, I oversee kind of all things music education, curriculum instruction, professional development, special opportunities. And so, we're, really glad to be able to have some dialogue and an ongoing dialogue about further developing audio education as part of music education and beyond in New York City Public Schools.
And how many students do you are in your under your purview?
1.1 million students, 1,800 schools.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So thank you for all that you shape for 1.1 million individuals. It's a lot of good in the world. So grateful to have you. Ty Boyland is an educator, social entrepreneur, music professional, and all-around wonderful human being. And you're hailing in from Memphis, Tennessee.
That's correct. A lot of the programming that we do is based on character development. So as much as it is about growing our skill set, it's about growing our hearts and our minds and being able to survive actually things like COVID-19 and how to transpose those skills into multiple streams of revenue and just a more compassionate world.
Strong work, man. We also have Elena Botkin-Levy joining us from San Francisco. Elena is the managing director of the Women's Audio Mission.
Hello, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Elena with Women's Audio Mission, and we are based in the Bay Area, though we have national and now with this moment global reach. And really, our mission is around advancing women and girls and gender nonconforming folks in the fields of STEM and audio technology and digital media. Because it's less than 5% of the people in those fields are women. And so we're out to change that. And we have a long relationship with AES, and we generally are serving about 2,000 women and girls every year, and are excited to see that number grow and expand in this moment. And I'm excited to tell you more in a bit about what we're doing, and thrilled to be on this panel with all of you.
Yeah, can't wait to hear about it. Such important work and so critical, especially right now. What a moment to capture this zeitgeist of global outreach through the digital interwebs and figure out how to get some momentum behind this thing, which is already really strong. Everywhere I go, it's awesome to see WHAM represented, and my students are big fans too. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jillian Damaris from, I'm going to call it Boston. It's really Everett, Massachusetts, right?
Yep, that's correct.
She's a music teacher at the Pioneer Charter School of Science.
Yeah. So, hello and special thank you again, Gabe, for inviting us on this video podcast. This is great. Yeah, my name is Jillian Damaris. I'm the Fine Arts Director and Middle School Music Teacher at Pioneer Charter School, which is a STEM-based public charter school in Boston, Mass. I'm also a current grad student at New York University, where I study music technology, and I'm a member of the AES Education Committee. So thank you again for this. Yeah, Pioneer Charter School has been huge in the STEM-based community in Boston. We focus our primary curriculum on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. My focus is developing a curriculum in music technology and audio engineering for my students to be focused within those areas. So we've seen a lot of development, even within K through 12. Since I've been assigned as the Fine Arts Director, I've been able to allow the arts and the other disciplines to be involved in it. And we've seen a lot of growth. And it's actually, despite how terrible COVID has been, especially for Everett being one of the top 3 areas in Massachusetts, it's actually been amazing to see what's come out of this entire experience. So we'll probably get more into that. But yes, the STEM is definitely our primary area at Pioneer Charter School.
That's amazing. And you said middle school, right?
Yes, middle school, which is pretty early to be introducing audio engineering, but my kids have latched onto it, and it's really incredible.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a too early. I mean,
right.
Anytime's a great time to jump in, and the earlier the better.
Mm-hmm.
So glad to have you with us. And Dan Fox from Lynn, Massachusetts, my man, is an educator. You are a adjunct professor at Tufts University, a music producer and engineer, and I will call you a teen audio education specialist.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Putting that tag on me. You summed it up pretty well. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Everybody in the rectangles and everybody out there that's taking the time to hang out with us. So yeah, I'm teaching at Tufts. They have a minor called music engineering. So I'm actually in the School of Engineering, and it's a really interesting program that merges the music department and the mechanical engineering departments. Before that, I, for many, many years, did teen programming, creative media and technology at Zoomix, which is actually where I met Elena Botkin-Levy, who did fine work in the radio station there. And I also do consulting nowadays, where I'm helping other educational institutions and nonprofits build successful music technology and audio education programs. And then the AES has been a wonderful thing for me, for sure. That's how I met Gabe. And for the last 2 years, we put on the High School Audio Educators Conference, which was essentially the first time there's been that kind of a community. And actually, many of these folks here I met through that. Actually, everybody except for Tony. Hi, Tony. And that's been fantastic. I hope that we'll be doing that again, either virtually or in person, as soon as we're able to. And launched the Audio Educators podcast very recently with Gabe, which has been another way to build community, just like we're doing right now.
Yeah. And so Dan, let the cat out of the bag. We've got a podcast called the Audio Educators Podcast, which is launched the beginning of this month, I guess. And we're focusing on all things audio. So make sure you guys go check that out too, audioeducatorspodcast.com. And we've been talking about fun in audio education as a specialized topic of conversation in the theme of that podcast. So I hope we can talk about a little bit of fun in this too, even though we're having not so much fun right now in quarantine. A little bit about myself. My name is Gabe Herman. I'm assistant professor of music industry at the Hart School. I am the vice chair of the education committee for the Audio Engineering Society. And it's been my project, my passion project, my special interest to try to create that community of high school and teen audio educators through the AES. And that is where I've met everybody in the room, is through AES in one way or another. The Audio Engineering Society for me has been absolutely critical as a tool in terms of understanding where I fit into the global scene of audio people in ways that wouldn't normally happen, because in education we tend to be cloistered into our institutions, and networking is difficult. But through the Audio Engineering Society, I'm able to meet practitioners, designers. It's a look into the future for all of my students who are looking for careers, where they might be, envisioning how they can use their special talents and skills to fit into a myriad of different potential positions in the field. So this conversation is actually just a natural continuation of the Audio Engineering Society's mission to bring folks together and have conversations around audio. Sometimes they're controversial conversations. Sometimes we bring up questions, we don't settle them, but we float them in the air, and we realize that in time we come to some consensus through conversation. And the Audio Engineering Society is huge in creating standards for our field as well. So these conversations can start innocuously, but they have deep rippled impacts, and especially in education. We don't usually talk about education specifically in high schools and in teen settings so much. In AES conferences, we're trying to change that. I think one of the things I want to get to in this hour today is that age is not really important, that audio education is audio education no matter how old you are. And there are some things we can drill down into that will help any educator or anyone who is in a position to influence a young person in their career choices in audio. Tony, I don't want to leave you out, man.
Well, no, I think I jumped the gun. So hello, everybody. Great to meet you all. I'm Tony Agnello. I guess my title is Fossil in Residence at Eventide. I've been and I can emphasize that by I'm thinking I joined the AES in May of 1973. So I've been with the AES for a while. And as I said earlier, it's been instrumental in our success. And what I neglected to mention is it's not just that through the AES and educators that people have come to work for Eventide, but that's where our customers come from too. So we literally wouldn't have a business if people weren't working in this field. So thanks for including me. I feel a bit like the odd person out. I'm not an educator, but Happy to be here.
Happy to be here too, and thank you again for hosting us. Um, so just to get a conversation started, I mean, I have so many questions for everybody in the room, and I'm really excited to hear more about how you're participating in audio education right now. Um, but maybe I could start with Liz. Um, how how are New York City schools dealing with the difficulties in teaching audio online? Has audio education been put on hold because of COVID? Or are there plans to continue pushing forward with audio education, even in this new paradigm?
Actually, it's interesting because I feel like, as we know there are so many challenges at this time, but at the same time, I feel like there's great learning and a chance to kind of take stock of everything. And one of the things I actually think I see is really an embracing, more of an embracing of audio instruction, than even had been happening before. Um, I mean, I think one challenge is that we definitely need more teacher training so that teachers can really kind of teach to the fullest, with audio. But I think that I just see so many teachers embracing audio because they're recognizing that, like, especially with schools happening, schools completely online now, audio is a real key piece of the equation, for communicating effectively and for making learning accessible. So I think that, in some cases, like, I'll just give a quick example. Music classes that usually rehearse are now really having to depend on audio in some shape or form, to continue what they were doing. And audio may or may not have been a priority before, but it certainly is now. So I definitely think there's actually a lot of momentum for audio education that's growing out of this time.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I think right now, a little bit of Cuba. I mean, if you check out, footage of Cuba, there's all these vintage cars that are driving down the road looking fly, but they're not the original cars with all the original parts. They're like, kept alive with washing machine parts. And there's a name for the folks down there who invent and keep alive things with invented parts, and inventinistas, I think is what they're called. And I think we're all sort of becoming that, whether we're into audio or not. We have to learn it to survive now because this is the new normal. Um, so are there, you mentioned professional development. Um, how do you partner with institutions like the Audio Engineering Society or others to provide that sort of instruction? Where does the New York City Department of Ed turn to for help with these sorts of things?
Well, I think, it's definitely important for us to turn to the professional community, and certainly, AES and other institutions of higher learning. I think, we're always looking for opportunities where our teachers and our students can have chances to, like, learn in real world contexts. So I think, we really depend on those partnerships to make sure that, like, our teachers and our students in turn, can have, like, not only a knowledge of how to use audio equipment and software effectively, but just an up-to-date understanding of, like, what the professional audio world looks like and the types of careers that are out there. So I'm just thinking about, again, a couple of examples, like, AES's High School Audio Educators Conference. I think, that's an example of PD, that's available to teachers. And also, for us in New York City, the AES conference happens, the convention happens at Javits every fall. And, we were super excited to see High School Audio Day be a part of the conference. And just that those conversations continue, I think, is important in terms of furthering both our teachers having real world understanding of what there is, and also the professional audio world knowing, like, what the needs are in school so that we can bridge that gap.
Yeah. And since you brought it up, I think I want to just mention to everybody that there is a formal uh, uh, track of High School Audio Day now at the Javits. It's been happening for a long time, but we've really been trying to amp it up and provide more opportunities. And this past year, we had, oh gosh, I think it was almost 200 students bus in from all over the New York City area, Connecticut, and Jersey. And they had a full day of programming where we had Rick Snowman give presentations on music production and critical listening. And then students got a guided tour of the showroom floor. I think Warren Hewart from Produce Like a Pro, and amazing producer in his own right. And I mean, Dan Fox took a group, so many folks volunteered their time to show these students around and make an impact on them, to show them what life can be like in a career in audio. And it was really amazing. And we're really wanting to build on that. And the community has been growing quite a bit.
They were bursting with questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like trying to absorb everything. I mean, if you've never been to the Javits Center for an AES convention, as an educator, it's already mind blowing. Then you bring your students in, and they're now all the minds are blown.
Yeah, it's just a mushroom cloud, right? And but having folks show the ropes and sort of say like, yeah, we're all kind of shell shocked walking through this floor because it's so massive. Normalizing that experience, but then also saying, well, but here's somebody who specializes in event audio. Hey, is anybody here been to an event? Have you ever looked at the sound system? What does that person behind the board do? That's a big part of what we do in the conventions and with outreach. A lot of the time is just showing people what's there. And Elena, I wanted to ask you because Women's Audio Mission is like one of those great adjuncts to any curriculum. You're sort of doing that PD work um, from both angles. I'm going to tell me if you disagree with this, the way I'm putting it, but I think PD can sometimes happen in reverse, where students go have these amazing opportunities and learn about something really neat and then bring it back to their teachers and say, hey, let me teach you about what I just learned outside of your classroom. How do we incorporate that? And then that sort of sparks the desire for more PD in a particular area. But can you tell us a little bit about what WAM is doing with young women out of school and how you work with educational institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. This isn't quite high school focused, but just before this, we were hosting a career panel for the WAM network, and we had Shure and Dolby and Universal Audio, and such a big part of our mission, both with the young people and then also with the wider WAM community, is around that professional development of saying there are so many jobs to consider in this industry. Maybe, for the young people, they think, well, I'm not a singer, so there's not a place for me in this industry. And so much of what we do through our classes is say, okay, maybe you're not a singer, but maybe you record that singer, or maybe you make the beat for that singer, or maybe you play guitar. There's all these opportunities. So primarily with young people, our program is called Girls on the Mic. And historically, it's been an after school program where we go into schools around the Bay Area. Primarily, we're in Oakland, San Francisco, and we just expanded to San Jose. And so we're working with about 100 different schools at various times during the year. So the after school program focuses on kind of like a sampler platter of media skills. So they're making podcasts, they're building synthesizers, they make beats, and learning about simultaneously all of the careers in this industry. And I think someone said earlier, it's never too young to start. And just those fundamental concepts, if you can get excited and passionate and you start to know some of the language, that just sets you up on this pathway for success in the future in any number of careers. So it's really exciting, and we're thrilled to be transitioning all of that to online and reaching way more young people these days. But in the wider sense, Women's Audio Mission does a lot of professional development with folks both in that middle and high school range and then beyond, around connecting with careers in the industry and the training to get into those careers.
Amazing. And so how are you taking things online right now? Can you give us some examples of how you've moved online?
Yeah, and literally it's been everything. So everything we do is now online. So our initiative we launched pretty quickly is called WAM Everywhere. And so, what that looks like for us is on the young people side of things, we're doing live Zoom classes every day of the week that are open to all of the same young people that we were working with, and then bringing more into the fold. It's a slight shift of how we're teaching, but it's the same concepts. And our instructors have just done a beautiful job of translating those curriculums to online learning. So, we've got classes every day of the week for young people. And we will continue that through the summer. We're doing signups now for our summer programming. I'll share out those links if needed to spread the word. So
Please.
summer programming will be happening. And then on the adult side of things, the WHAM Everywhere initiative is also connecting with people globally. We, on the career panel I just left, there was folks from Greece and Brazil and all across the United States. And those classes are focused on everything from the career panel to setting up your home studio to introduction to synthesizers and Pro Tools. So all of the educational and training programming that we typically do in person at our studio, which is in San Francisco, and in our Oakland educational space, we're really thinking about how do we bring that online? How does that make it more open and accessible to folks globally that we've wanted to be in the WHAM network? And now this is the moment to expand and take the reach farther. So it's exciting, like other people have said, and there's lots of challenges, but some really beautiful things coming out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the challenges are, like, in places and ways you don't normally expect, and, one of the things I wanna sort of talk about a little bit, and maybe Ty, I don't know if you have any, perspective on, like, how your students have been managing this, you know, I think we can all imagine it's been tough, but, one of the great things about, groups like WHAM and ZoomX and all these other team programs is the places that students can go, kids can go, and physically get connected with audio. And sometimes just having a place to go and play with toys is important because it's an outlet, it's a release, it's a space away from maybe a not so good space. So how has this really impacted your community of students? I mean, are they still finding ways to get creative and stay positive? And what are they turning to in terms of access to resources?
So this is something that keeps me up at night, but also at the same time gives me hope. Throughout the school year, I work in two different high schools, one of which every kid at the beginning of the school year receives an iPad that they get to use. The other school does not. When we left for spring break, no one knew that that was going to be it for the school year. The school that issued the iPads came up with the response to COVID-19 relatively quickly, and we were online up and going within a week or two. My other school, some of those kids I haven't had any contact with at all. And one thing that COVID-19 has done is really shown the inequities within education. You know, technology as well, but education as a whole. When we have a scenario to where some kids have access to education and some don't, that's a non-starter in my mind. We have so much work to do, and for us to be in a technological age where technology moves so exponentially fast, there is no reason why nationwide we shouldn't have had a better response for this. But with that said, the kids that I do have access to, this is something that we've trained for all year long. We've trained on technology. We've trained on how to work remotely, how to work with others in different states and in different countries. And even through yes, I've had Jared Shield with Berkeley FaceTime in even before COVID-19, and he's talking about Berkeley and education opportunities past high school. We've had Dave McLaughlin come in and talk about Genelec and the difference between speakers and monitors. So that access has always been there. What COVID-19 has done for us all has given us an opportunity to go through this together. And I think that there are certain moments in history where an older generation and a younger generation get to go through something together. So it's not one of those conversations where I have to say, well, in my time or in my day, and there's no relatability. We're all going through this and we're all trying to find solutions, especially the young people. And if we're calling our young kids the leaders of the future, then we have to start listening to them now. And we have to start listening to them in those times where solutions are, coming left and right. We have to figure out what it is that that you think can make the world better. Even with Zoom that we're on now, we've maxed out Zoom's capability. So when teaching Logic Pro X, Zoom has a function for remote control. My kids are able remotely to control my screen, so they can push the buttons. They can bring up the plugins. They can use the equalizers and compressors. And we've talked about, okay, what are the limitations? If you could design a better Zoom, what would you do? So these are the type of things that are going to move us forward. Also, for the kids that are not mine, that have access to the internet, that I don't directly teach throughout the school year, I have a program that I do every Friday from 6 to 7 called BOSS, Beats Over Streets Symposium. Because a lot of our kids, if they don't have access to education, then they have pretty much free reign to get in lots of trouble. So to make sure that they're preoccupied with something that's going to be beneficial to their minds, it's an opportunity for us all to get together, talk about college, talk about primarily how they're doing through these times. Some of my kids are freshmen and sophomores in college, and they're able to mentor high school kids and middle school kids that are in that same online realm. So they're getting to ask questions about their experiences. And through those conversations, we make music. So we build a soundtrack on top of the conversations that we have. They're able to share the music that they've made. They're able to ask me questions about my expertise and my tips. And it's just a beautiful thing. But all things being equal, I wish that all of our kids had access to that.
Well, I think what you're saying is that all things aren't. They haven't been equal for a long time. And I've seen this too, even amongst the students that I've worked with. I'm blown away by the inequities of access once the school construct disappears. Like, that is such a critical fabric to not just like the formal education, but the informal education of socialization, and how do we get through dealing with each other. And audio is a collaborative art. No matter what part of audio you're in, there's, you're working with others, and you're using music as a tool, as a fulcrum to get from point A to point B. And it's so I think that's one of the amazing things about AES is I get to find out about programs like yours. It gives me hope, that like there are ways that we haven't even mass distributed to the grand population that can get us a step towards that solution. So you've got some students who are using Logic and some who are maybe don't have anything, and they're just off the radar, or are there students that you're working with who are resorting to other technologies and getting inventive too?
So the kids at my school with the iPads, of course, Logic isn't a part of the iPad yet. I'm assuming that it will be soon, but they have GarageBand. What they're able to do is still record the times. So we're writing songs about COVID-19. They're building playlists about how they feel. So the second week that we were online, I asked them, take your top 10 songs that describe how you feel in this. So it doesn't have to be a conversation. You don't have to talk. And when I was growing up, there were lots of songs that were on the radio that could describe exactly how I was feeling. And I wanted them to really understand that that's how music works. Music speaks for those that have something to say, but they really don't know what to say. And it creates an environment of empathy. So if I hear a kid's playlist and it's not very hopeful, then it lets me know where their mind is, and it lets me know how I can guide them to a little bit more hope. The kids that have playlists that are very hopeful, I give those kids opportunities to mentor their peers, help uplift your peers, and that's how we're going to build those leaders of the future. And other kids that don't have access, we do pretty fun things like, okay, on your phone, record a sound that sounds like a bass drum. On your phone, record a sound that sounds like a hi-hat, and then send it to me. And then we're going to put that in Logic, and we're going to make a beat with those sounds that you made either with your mouth or with household goods, because creativity doesn't have to be limited by technology.
That's a strong statement. Dan, I want you to jump in, man, because I know you're.
I know Ty, you got me going, so I'm like itching on this topic. What I really appreciate about what I heard when Ty started out is kind of identifying that there is like a core at the fundamental problem in education as far as access, and we do need to talk about that. But then he also went to like, well, how can we be inventive as educators to get the most from our students in spite of inequality, right? So I think it's important to get to the root, and we won't be able to solve that issue, certainly not right now. But schools, public school systems, they're just grossly unequal, right? I mean, one of the fundamental problems, in my opinion, is that a large part of the funding for school districts comes from real estate taxes. So if you live in a community where there's lots of really nice houses with lots of property and the real estate taxes are higher, then those school systems are just much better equipped. It fundamentally reproduces the same system of inequality that already exists. It's just reinforcing it. So, really to get to the root of this, we got to go to legislators and really take a hard look at the system. And it's not the district's fault necessarily. We can't say, well, the district has to do this and it has to do that. A lot of times they're dealing with a very difficult hand they've been dealt. And it's systemic, right? But it breaks my heart when I hear, teachers are just notorious for like, oh yeah, like I went to Staples and I bought $250 worth of, art supplies for my students. It's like, damn, you shouldn't have to do that. Teachers shouldn't have to go be buying their own supplies, What I'm looking at now with COVID-19 is that I guess one way to think about it is, and I know this is hard, and I don't have this whole thing figured out. I don't know that anybody does yet, but schools know that if they have students inside their building and they want to do a particular type of programming, they have to provide the things necessary for that. So if you're going to be playing dodgeball in the auditorium, the school has to buy dodgeballs. And if they're going to do audio technology, they have to build a multimedia lab and have the computers. Well, if we are moving in a direction, maybe, where education is happening in the home, we may have to figure out how we're going to provide technology for students in the home, off-site, whether it's some kind of a sliding scale to purchase, whether it's some kind of a rental system, whether it's a loan, whatever. We got to put our heads together and figure that out so that the access part can be addressed. In the meantime, like Ty said, he's got I love the positivity of like, yeah, this is messed up, but here's what we can do with what we have available. There's so many like iOS and Android too, like free music making apps that are super fun and sound incredible. I actually know a professional musician who does performance with all of their sounds coming from literally like cell phones that have been repurposed as synthesizers and samplers and whatnot. There's amazing things there, and web-based platforms for recording or production or whatever. That's huge, right? Because cloud collaboration. I mean, we've coined this term recently: remote, asynchronous, remote collaboration. Right? Has anyone heard that term? It's like what Liz was talking about earlier. It's like ensembles need to play music together and they're in a rectangle on Zoom like we are now. What the heck do we do? The interesting thing about that is that in a way, and don't get me wrong, by the way, real performance with human beings next to each other in a room is not going away. And, I certainly don't want it to. But in the meantime, because we're forced to try to make music with other people through this method, it actually makes musicians think more like recording engineers. Or like, what we do in a recording studio when we're producing a record, overdubbing, somebody else already recorded some other day, and now we're going to add another part, and the other person isn't here anymore. That's not a new concept in a recording production environment, but for education it is. So maybe in a way this opens the door to music students, traditional music students becoming more connected to music technology or audio technology and kind of bridging that gap and getting us closer to where we'd like to be in terms of modernizing our music education.
Yeah. I wonder how, Jillian, how you're resonating with some of this, because you're like in the trenches, you're on the front lines of a lot of this too.
Oh, yeah. And I'm relating to so many of the topics that you're bringing up. I will say that in accordance to what Dan had asked, we have a loaner program going on for our Chromebooks. We've had Chrome carts at our school for a while. And then at the beginning of this past year, we had our students each with their own Chromebook. We had one-to-one, which was great. But unfortunately, the students didn't do so well with taking care of their Chromebooks. So we had to go back to our Chrome carts. But thankfully, we've had them. What's really great about the situation that we were in prior to all this is that I had already set up my students with Soundtrap accounts. I'd already shown them all the web apps that we were going to be using throughout the year. And so when all this started, they had access to those materials, and they had already signed on, and it had worked out for us. But what I think now is the most difficult thing for a lot of teachers, and after speaking with teachers from charter schools and public schools, is really finding a way to translate their lessons that they have in their schools online. And I think what they have to realize is that it's not really possible. And what you need to do is be able to be flexible at this current moment, use the tools that are available, and not be afraid to maybe introduce topics of composition, topics of improvisation, and allowing yourself to open up to all of these available tools. For other things too, prior to COVID, we had some issues with, like teaching online. And you asked me, what's the hardest part of teaching online? I'd say probably the technical difficulties with certain web apps. Some of them are foolproof and great, and then other ones are still glitchy. Students will submit a project to me, and their saved work won't show up. And so it's a communication with them, and it's a communication with their parents, trying to track them down. Students also not having the ability to follow the directions carefully. It's difficult when they don't have that controlled space, being inside a classroom when they're in a safe environment, and we're eliminating all distractions. That's not available for them. They may be in really difficult environments at home, or they may, may just be prone to distraction. So that's a couple of the trickiest things that I've had to encounter right now. But by avoiding this, we've tried to make videos that are both for kinesthetic, auditorial, and visual learners, trying to make movement-based videos and activities, trying to incorporate fun in their environments where they are. And also trying to create videos that break down assignments so that they can get to the most essential parts of a project. And also trying to find additional resources for them, motivating videos with people from their generation that they can relate to kind of get them involved and get them excited about the work that they're going to be doing. I found that the most relevant projects that I've done with my students we did a ringtone project, which was really fun. And what was great is I gave them the tools to be able to then export those ringtones to their cell phones. So I've had students send me recordings of their ringtone and then their ringtone like through their phone, which is really great. We've also done like remix projects. I write a little bit of music. And so I had wrote a song many years ago, and I sent them the track with all of the vocals, and I had used a bunch of different instruments, guitar and piano and flute, and I had a few students really latch onto it, and they spent hours and hours building their own remix of the song. And I wanted to publish it so bad, but I couldn't. It was very cool. And then also like we started beatmaker projects in Soundtrap, which I'm relating to Ty. That's a great idea using found sounds. We've used a lot of the tools that are within the web apps, which the kids really enjoy, but definitely trying new and creative different ways to try to make light of the situations now, incorporating their own music, like I said before. And also another thing, try to find different ways to encourage feedback from students. So I consistently send out Google Forms checking in. What did you like of this assignment? What did you not like? What do you think we could improve? What do you want to listen to? What do you want to work on? And also keeping parents in the loop. I just did a Zoom the other day with a parent who was telling me about the difficulties with their student. The reason why they couldn't submit their work is because they were sitting at the computer for 5 hours a day, and being a fifth grader, that's really difficult. The first 2 hours, they're doing great, they're focused. And then the last 3, they're distracted and all over the place. But they're grateful to have music as something to go to, in addition to their other classes that they're juggling. So
you're talking a lot. What it seems to be coming like a theme that keeps coming back is that we are teaching the best we can. We are drinking from the fire hose and throwing the dirt over our shoulders in spades. But we need support from tech companies who can help us figure out how to utilize technology. And we're fortunate to have Tony in the room. Tony, how would educators approach a company like Eventide for help with curriculum?
Well, by contacting us. First off, I'm humbled by this conversation. It's really been an education so far. So I had a couple of thoughts in terms of found sounds and being at home. Another thing that you might have students, I hesitate to suggest this only because you might get the kids in trouble, but it's not just creating sounds in your home, but modifying them. We all know about reverb. A bathroom makes a great reverb. Well, maybe not a great, depends on your bathroom, but it's an interesting thing to explore how you can modify sound by space. If you have a staircase, maybe that works. So there's that. But in terms of a company like Eventide makes plugins, and when we're approached by educators, I think we've always agreed to share our plugins. We also spend a lot of time doing content. And here's another thing I hesitate to mention because of my age, but I have a hobby that's a podcast where I've been attempting to capture the life stories of people I've known through the years. It's called Gear Club. It's not an Eventide, it's not Eventide specific. Eventide's name comes up occasionally because I've worked with these people over the years, but it would give students an insight into how sounds were created before technology took over. And then there are these Zoom sessions where we're running these Quarantides daily, completely because of COVID. When COVID hit, we were hit pretty hard. We were shut down. Our developers can work remotely, but our sales and marketing folks who normally either attend trade shows or demonstrate our products or create videos were kind of locked in their houses. And so I suggested that we try to put aside the things we normally do and see if we can have a go at creating streaming content that would be useful for the community, get to know each other a little bit better, and basically do this. So we've been running these Quarantides daily, and it's turned into quite an exhausting adventure, actually. We're getting a little bit better at it. As all of you have mentioned, the technology is quirky, and we're trying to work our way around it as well. But it's clearly the future, and I've been feeling really good about it, and the conversation today just makes me feel even better about it. I think this is a valuable thing to do. Gabe, I forgot what your question was, so I just went off on.
I just wanted to know how can educators connect with Eventide? They contact you.
Here we are. Yeah. Again, students, software is. People consider software as having no value. I mean, if that were to happen, Eventide would go out of business because it costs money to develop our products. However, students aren't likely to be buying our products anyhow. So we've always, I think, had the sense that if an educator comes to us and feels that they can take advantage of some of our technology, we offer NFRs to those educators. I know we've done that with WAM, but we're not, we're a fairly small company. We're about 80 employees. We've always been reasonably small, and we don't really have an academic outreach program. So it's more academics approaching us. But we'd be delighted, yeah, to help out any way we can. And Ty, your comments are spot on. And Liz, so I'm the son of an immigrant, born in Brooklyn, was incredibly fortunate to have the advantage of going to public schools in New York City. Public grade school, Brooklyn Tech, and City College of New York, and then City University. So I literally wouldn't be here if I had been born somewhere else and been disadvantaged. So I feel very, very fortunate for where I was born and the time I was born.
Nice job, New York.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, New York. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom and Dad. My mom is still a school aide in my junior high school in Brooklyn, and she's 92. Obviously, she's home now because of COVID, but she might be the oldest employee of the New York City Board of Ed at 92.
Wow.
Been there forever. And my wife is a school teacher, so. But enough of it. No, I'm taking too much time.
No, it's
So yeah, contact us.
Yeah. So one thing that's occurring to me as I'm hearing you, that's very generous of you, and it's not, but it's not uncommon. I think of a lot of other companies too that are I find through AES. There's good people out there who want to help. We're designing products to help, not just to solve an audio application, but to help a community, to help the community of people they're involved in, and it's.
But let me say, it's because of music. I mean, we're all doing what we do because of music.
Right.
If you understand signal processing, you can make a fortune on Wall Street. Why are you working at Eventide? Because you're a musician, and because you love music, and because you appreciate that music is a very impactful, deep way that humans connect socially. And it's always been the case, and it'll always be the case. So that's why we're doing it. I've never felt competitive about our competitors in the industry. There's so many ways to process music and create new tools that can be an inspiration. And that's what it's always been about. Daniel, I don't know if you're in a really, really big room or if that's a uke, but on your door.
That's a guitarron in the back. No, just kidding. That is a uke.
Okay.
One with the guitar in the back.
Yeah. So
actually, Gabe does have a guitarron in the back.
I've been downsizing. I studied cello as a young man, played a lot of guitar. Lately, I've mainly been playing uke. So
I put it there to make the room look bigger. No, but Tony, thank you. It's great. It's great. What you're doing to pull us all together. Gabe, is it okay if I have a question for my fellow educators here, if I may, about teaching on Zoom?
Yeah.
Or just teaching on the web. So, I mean, we're all trying to do this. We're all like floundering, the students, most institutions just said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Like classes go online, and we're like, some people maybe had already been incorporating that. If you're really lucky, you were already doing, you're teaching online before COVID. And so you had a head start and this wasn't that big of a deal. But for most of us, there's a ton of improvising going on. And the way I see it, there's two parts to teaching, I guess, if I have to boil it down. It's part performance and it's part facilitation, where you're trying to connect to the students, engage with the students, get them to be the ones that are vocal, them to be the ones that are taking action in the classroom. So here in the Zoom setting, it feels kind of like crippling at first, right? Especially if you're used to being in a classroom. I know when I'm in a classroom, I, like to make noise and run around and act silly and all that stuff. And here I'm inside, here I am right here. So I can think about it like TV production, I guess, from a performance point of view. I'm here, I'm using the frame that I have available, and I can lean into my mic and use my radio voice. But from the facilitation point of view, engagement point of view, what are you guys doing to get your students to not just sit there like wallpaper staring, you know, what are you doing to draw them in? That's my question.
You know what's so interesting is I think what we've been moving towards is actually getting outside of this box. And it's kind of what was being discussed earlier is this is our moment of connection is right here in this space with each other, but there's so much more education that can happen outside of this square. So we start with the facilitation here, and then you're sending people out to go make those cool sounds in their houses, capture interesting audio, and then come back. So I think actually what we're doing more so right now is thinking about how do we disconnect from the square and go do some stuff and then come back with each other. So much of the first few weeks was focused on how do we do everything in our curriculum on this platform. And I think what all of us are experiencing is you just can't. It's not possible. So get super creative and move beyond this moment. And I think that's both about the access points for young people. That's about the creativity. That's about, especially for us, because we're outside of the academic school day. How do you know that they've been sitting on the computer already for a bunch of hours and don't want to just have that vibe continue? So that's what we're thinking about.
Yeah, I definitely use Zoom as a way to check for understanding. Typically, what I would do is use Google Docs and some dynamic links and use something like Screencastify. So I might record a 5-minute video explaining what their task for the day is. And then throughout the week, there are certain times where I'll put on that document when they can reach me on Zoom if they need additional help. And the reason I like to do that instead of having just set times that we meet every day is thinking about those students that it might take them a little bit longer than somebody else to get it. So you have all week long to really lead your own learning. And that's one of the competencies at Crosstown High School that I really can appreciate is that they give kids opportunities to evaluate the pace of their own work. So instead of saying, hey, Monday, this is what we're doing, I want this turned in by Tuesday. No, on Thursday and Friday, we're going to reconvene. We're going to talk about it. If Thursday you don't have it, then we'll revisit it Friday. And if you need more time than that, then that lets me have one-on-one opportunities on Zoom to kind of help those kids that might need a little bit of help. But I don't like having kids online for long periods of time because it doesn't work. They get ornery, I get ornery, and then it doesn't work out well. But just knowing that and also emailing the parents and saying, hey, this is what I emailed your child. This will be a great opportunity for you to help your kid with some of these projects and create bonding opportunities at home.
Yeah, that was actually going to be a question I wanted to pose to everybody because now I'm going through this because I got a 5-year-old who's in kindergarten who's now I'm the new part-time kindergarten teacher, and I got a 4-month-old who's luckily oblivious to all of this for me. But the question I wanted to ask is, what advice do you guys have for parents? Because I don't. This morning I had to go through this whole thing where I had to. I don't know what they called it. It was a math assignment for my son where they were trying to teach that 8 plus 7 is the same as 7 plus 8, but they called the 7 plus 8, they gave it a name. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. And it's basic math, but like it's insider lingo for a teacher, but parents, I don't know. So I just assumed that that's what the teacher meant, and that's what we're doing now. And I'm taking charge of my son's education in that way because I have to, because I'm an idiot otherwise. But when it comes to audio education, I think one of the things that's important is we're creating opportunities at home for students to be autodidactic with audio education and all of our education. And one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit more is the opportunity we have right now to step away from the entire education delivery system and say, this didn't work for a percentage of our students when it was working. And now we are freed. those students are liberated from that system of educational oppression, and we can totally reinvent what education is for those students. And so how do we approach that problem? But I want to come back to that question in a minute. But first, I was just curious, like, what advice would you say to parents, maybe say to teachers who might be listening right now, if that's our audience? What should teachers be telling the parents specifically, or how can they be empowering or enabling students in the home?
I think just to bring something up, some of my parents, a large majority of them speak a different language. And that's been a huge barrier because the majority of the teachers at my school only speak English and very few are bilingual. We've used a program called Class Dojo, and that's been really great for us because it allows us to offer translations for parents. It's also been simultaneously a reward system, which some teachers use. So it's done a lot of great things for our school. I feel like the best possible thing that I could do for a parent is provide them with as many resources as I can that they can use. Tons of videos. I mean, for math and the standard subjects, they use mostly programs at my school like Pearson, Khan Academy, Edpuzzle, Nearpod, Cahoots. They use all those different programs, and there are ways that that some of them will allow translation. So even if you can provide those details for parents, they can take some time for themselves and just review some of the lessons, see what it is that their child is trying to understand, and help guide them with as much knowledge that they can gain from that.
I definitely agree. I think that it's sad, but we live in a society so many times where we tell people, Google it. Just look it up. All you got to do is Google it. But the problem with that is if you don't know what you're looking for, then you don't know when you found it. So I think it's really important that if we are experts in our space, that we do compile those resources that make it so much easier for those parents to take breath of fresh air and say, hey, you know what? Thank you for that. Now we can get started instead of going on an endless rabbit hole journey of misinformation. There's so many things out there that are not helpful. So for us, if we know things that absolutely work or that are beneficial, then it's our responsibility to get that to the people that need it the most.
Ty, my favorite example of what you're talking about is there are so many. If you go to YouTube and you look up how to play Happy Birthday, there are so many videos where it's wrong. I mean, just tons where there are wrong notes in Happy Birthday. And so we're at a point now with the internet where, yeah, there's all this stuff available, but we got to curate it.
Liz, how do you think your teachers will be, or have you had any discussions about that, or from your perspective, directing educators in their own programming? Like what do you see as the future of high school education from a parent's perspective in terms of empowering parents to teach students in tandem with teachers?
I think one huge theme that really shines out in a lot of the professional conversations we have about, planning, like for now and also going forward, is the idea of really strengthening connections with families, and I think it's important. Like sometimes we think about, okay, there's the content, but the thing is, like, it's not just we're teaching content, we're teaching people. And if we really want to engage them, then we need to know like where they are and what their needs are. And I think, now more than ever, it's about not just engaging the student, but engaging families. So I think that part of what that means is leaving room to find out about people's stories and encourage, people to tell their stories and then truly listen to those. And, just kind of linking that back to, to audio education. One of the things, in New York City was that, we were really, an epicenter and at the height of stuff, like right around spring break, so a decision was made to actually have everybody just work through, straight through spring break, because otherwise it really, ups the chances of everybody, going outside and not staying home. And, we actually, during spring break, instead of having, just kind of, I guess, standard lessons, we developed some materials that were really like projects, actually in all the art forms, to engage families, and like one of them was the idea of encouraging families and having step-by-step instructions to be able to like capture like your most treasured family stories in a podcast, and then say like pull that into Soundtrap, and put effects into it, and music that really creates the mood and really memorializes the stories. And so I think that really putting that premium on the stories of people, so that we really have like 2020 about who it is that we're serving. I think that speaks to so many issues, and especially the equity issue that is really so kind of mirrored to us and magnified now through the virus.
Mm, yeah. So you're providing resources for teaching through some from PD and things that were sort of going on before COVID. What you're talking about now, I think, is um, helping, using what you were doing before to help the point we're in now, where we have to take stock and reflect on the situation, not just be in the situation. But now that the semester is winding down, we're going to have some time to process and think and prepare for what's next. And what you're talking about is so important, is bringing out all of the imperfections, the things that didn't work. And before I asked how do I help parents, I sort of dropped this thing and walked away from it, about we have this chance to walk away from the system that we had before that was not working for every student, and how do we reimagine it better for those students that were previously left behind. And so do you I guess I want to ask Liz, like, how do you see that in terms of approaching professional development? Is that going to include a lot more of um, Zoom type events where people are zooming in to learn about journaling people, so that we can tell those stories and make them more known, so that there's a greater empathy for the problems that we're trying to solve? Um, I, I'm just going to say this too, to react for reaction, is that one of the good things that can come out of COVID is that we're all in crisis, and now everyone's going to see the crisis, and we can't hide anymore. We have to address these things. And is it our now part of our job as educators and administrators to provide opportunities for amplifying? Is that now amplifying those problems now is part of our mission, maybe in a way it wasn't before?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's, a great challenge, and then also an opportunity here for us to think differently and to change in ways that we need to, is the fact that, this is extended for way longer than anybody thought it would, I think. And, I know in the last, let's say, 3 weeks or so, I've really been trying to wrap my head around the fact that, like, I went into this thinking this was like a short-term crisis, like there's a few weeks that we're going to have to get through, and then things will go back to normal. And it's really clear to me now, like this is no longer like short-term crisis planning. This is like planning for a much longer trajectory. And so I think that in a way, what it compels us to do is like, if we were tempted to try to kind of hobble through and put a band-aid on stuff before, we can't do that anymore. And I think that these really have to be themes that are going to come out in PD. I mean, I know, for us, we usually have like citywide, music teacher PD, and I have like an auditorium of, 450 music teachers. We can't have that, but I think that, we will definitely have some forums that maybe even, of course, online, that maybe even make for like greater connectedness among our community. And I think that it also, is going to, we're going to have to be in those professional discussions. Of course, I think many times people are thinking about like the surface level, like the how to, what should I be doing and how do I do it? But I always go back to like the why. Like we need to reconnect to like our core beliefs of why we're doing this, because I always come back to like that at the end of the day, like the thing that makes us professionals as educators is that we're being paid to make decisions. So on what basis are we making those decisions? And I think that's so important. Again, I know that many times, even in under normal circumstances, during a PD, what feels like the most practical is like to, walk out with like, lesson plans and warm-ups that you can do tomorrow. But I think there are much deeper issues here that we've been ignoring for a long time, and that we have to really hit these head on in any PD. Otherwise, we really risk our efforts being misguided.
Mm, mm. And I think, AES is, again, one of those great resources where you can utilize online trainings or online events. The Vienna conference, which is coming up in June, which typically you'd have to travel halfway across the world for, is now going to be available online. And it's not going to be hundreds of dollars to attend. It'll be 50. You've got programming like WAM, which is available now everywhere, thanks to the new Zoom paradigm. And do you guys have any plans for PD in with WAM?
Yeah, I would love to plug Save the Date. Usually we do WAM cons, which are conferences that we do. Typically we would have been in LA in July, and then in New York right after AES in October. And at least for July, we will be doing virtual WAMCon, and would love to see folks around the country and internationally join. So save the date, July 24th and 25th. And then, yeah, those WAM Everywhere classes, really would encourage folks to check those out, womensaudiomission.org. And those are all free right now, along with Sound Channel, which we've also made available for free on our website. And that was something that was launched back in 2009. It's an online e-learning series, and would love to have people check that out as well.
Yeah, outstanding resource. Can't say enough good things. And so glad it's going to be more accessible. And this is the irony that as we isolate, we're also becoming more connected in these ways, and geography is removing boundaries from people that wouldn't used to be there. Um, so uh, so I see that I got a note here. We're going to post the links to some of these events on the live stream chat so that folks at home can see and listen. There's lots of ways students can be part of conversations. There is the Hey Audio student Facebook page, which is run by our friend John Crivet, but is also an amazing place for students to find resources about jobs and careers, opportunities to join in on conversations like this one, find out about giveaways and sweepstakes, and all kinds of scholarship opportunities. Really, really important sounding board for what we do. I don't want to open up for anyone else to share at this point, any other things that they wanted to plug. We're in this together. We're all teaching from different angles. We're working this out. We're improvising jazz, and none of us have hung out even close to enough in the clubs to understand the language of jazz. We're just kind of improvising the improvisation. So what tips would you share as a plug? An endorsement, personal endorsement as a teacher. I have done this and it's been great, or it's the greatest thing. Maybe if everybody could just share one little thing would be awesome. Go ahead, Julie.
I'll go start. Well, first of all, I want to put a big plug for Gabe and Dan's podcast. Your podcast is so great. I listened to it twice yesterday. Yeah, it's really, really great. And I actually have never had a professor with a bubble pipe, but if I ever did, I would let you know. So yeah, that's great. Oh, hey. Never mind. I take that back. Can you make it blow bubbles?
We're working on that. These are just props. We don't actually smoke tobacco. These were stage props, and we've discovered that there's a way to mod them to blow bubbles. But Dan and I are so tied up making podcasts and stuff that we haven't figured out how to do that yet. Good.
That's great. I wanted to throw in a comment. I know a lot of teachers are trying to create virtual ensembles and virtual choirs right now. And they're having a lot of difficulty with their students knowing how to record correctly. one thing I'd say is make sure that you are very clear about what types of files you want your students to send. I did a virtual choir assignment and I had a multitude of students sending me MOV files, which are, those QuickTime movie files, and then MP4, MP3 when I specifically wanted movie files. So just being very clear about those things is important. And then also the Audio Education Society is an incredible resource for reaching out to engineers who could help you to put these virtual choir, virtual ensembles together. I'm finding a lot of teachers feeling like they have to DIY it, and there's so much behind it. You have to know so much about audio engineering. So please, if you join the Audio Engineering Society and reach out to any of these qualified professionals who would be more than willing to help you, I think we can not only help the teachers, but also help those engineers who would love maybe a little extra income. We can all kind of work together. So that's a plug for you guys and for all the engineers out there who continue to do great work every day.
I would start by saying that the three scariest words for me throughout this whole ordeal is back to normal. Because back to normal symbolizes to me that inequity that we were talking about, the unpreparedness that we were talking about, and just the world being reactive instead of being proactive. What I can see beneficial coming out of this, if organizations and school systems can get this right, is an extreme benefit for those super multi-talented kids. I have a student right now that loves to sing, loves to dance, and loves to act. But we know as organizations that transportation can be one of those limitations. And a lot of times our kids have to pick one thing. Being online, and I was just doing a masterclass for maybe 20 organizations a few days ago. And I pitched out the idea that it would be great if there could be maybe once a month where all of these organizations can get together in breakout rooms. Kids can experience all of these different things that they're interested in at the same time, or at least have access from the safety of their homes, and they don't have to choose. They can fulfill whatever dream it is that they have. So you don't have to pick if I want to be a musician. I don't have to pick if I want to be a dancer. I don't have to pick if I want to be an actor. I can do all of those things without having to stretch resources or my mom or dad to get me this place or that place. So I think that if we all find ways that we're dealing with COVID-19 that cross over and we use those best practices, it can only benefit our youth. And one last thing, speaking to Jillian's point about the files, I had a lot of organizations show me Dave Grohl's video, and they're like, how do I get my Zoom to look like this? Why does my Zoom not look this crisp or sound that crisp? And I'm like, yeah, they didn't record that on Zoom. So that's a little tip there.
Yeah, just echoing what everyone said, I would say two things. And one of this is kind of going back to the resource conversation. I know here in the Bay, both in Oakland and San Francisco, there's been both private companies and nonprofits working to really get tools into young people's hands, whether that's Wi-Fi or computers, and just on the parent side of things to really if your school hasn't been in touch with you about those, to look for those. It was about 50% of students in Oakland didn't have access to Wi-Fi or a device, and there was just a massive investment from Twitter and Square to put those devices out there. So just looking out for those resources. And I think Jillian and both Ty were talking about this earlier, but there's such amazing resources online. Girls on the Mic is open to students around the country, so we would love to be a resource, and so many amazing things online. So I'm excited to keep connecting with this circle of people. As Ty, you were just saying, I think the opportunities in this moment to keep these conversations going will support us as educators, and then also that'll translate to the young people. So really excited to keep the conversation moving.
Yeah, just to echo, those ideas, I think collaboration is just so important during this time. I think among each other, just as thinkers, and just, I think also the idea that like no one organization has it all, that is going to be able to provide everything, but together, we can look at can provide what, and I think then students and families will get more of their needs will be met if we can actually really leverage our collaborations. And I guess kind of along those lines, just one thing I just wanted to throw out there in terms of my my enthusiasm about keeping this conversation going, with AES and with all of you is it would be such a game changer, for music teachers and school music ensembles if there were some kind of like consumer ready audio technology, that could be used to hold live remote rehearsals where everybody in the ensemble can hear one another. So I feel like that's an example of like, collaboration that like if we, can kind of keep this conversation going about the needs and what that I'm really hopeful that that's in the works and that's something that can come to schools, because that would really, really be one of the key tools, that would just help everyone.
I- if I could just add one thing to that, we always could do this before COVID, right? We always had this technology. I mean, not always, but we've had this technology for a while. But now we're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, this is like, hey, Ty, like you're in Tennessee, like we're talking. Well, okay, Elena, you're in the Bay Area. We could have, each other as guest lecturers in our classes, or reach out to Tony, or reach out to Gabe or anybody, to enhance and supplement the curriculum you have, whether you're in higher ed or in high school or middle school. Um, so that's kind of I feel like my eyes have been opened up to that a little bit, and it broadens the possibilities.
So much good stuff. I mean, Tony, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, if you go to Eventide's website, we do post historical blogs, but also blogs that explain how effects work. And I think you can trust most of my memory. But I can't think of anything else to add other than check out the Gear Club podcast. And to say thank you, Gabe, for putting this together. It's an honor to meet all of you, and thank all of you for what you're doing. It's just heartwarming to know that there are people out there doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and a big thank you to you, Tony, for having us and making this space available for us to have this conversation and connect with each other.
More than welcome.
This is like the most exciting time to all be living through this together. Um, there's some things I could echo that were like stick with me points that everyone's brought up, and I think I'm going to be thinking about this conversation for a long time. And I really hope that it inspires folks out there to get in touch with us individually as a group. Get in touch with the Audio Engineering Society. If you're a teacher, reach out to me, gabe.herman@aes.org. And if there's a way I can help facilitate the education committee, somehow supporting what you're doing as an educator or put you in touch with somebody, that would be my greatest honor and pleasure. Um, I think for everybody here, we do this because we truly believe in it. We're passionate about it. And we're part of we're a small cross section of folks who are working on this globally. And I'm sure there's somebody working on some new technology that we're all pining for now that's going to unlock the next dimension of this. And I want to echo Ty's sentiment that the three most scary words are back to normal. Normal is gone. And I'm cool with that. It's not comfortable to live with what you're not comfortable with, but that's an opportunity to turn it into something better, right? And then we all live in a more comfortable space, and teaching is one of those dangerous spaces to begin with. So hey, we got into this because we didn't want to go with the safe bet. We wanted to take risks and inspire people, and hopefully grow ourselves. So thank you all for making the time to be here today and talk about this in this group setting. Truly, like Tony, totally humbled and appreciative of everything everyone's doing. And Tony, thanks so much again.
Thank
And
you. This was great. Thanks all. Stay in
Thank you,
touch.
Tony. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.